The CCIM Tom Rohde Legacy Award is being named after you, and you will be the inaugural recipient of the award. What does it mean to have this award named after you and your efforts in developing San Antonio?
Wow. You know, to be honored by a group of your peers is probably one of the ultimate professional honors you can get. And to have been involved with the chapter since its beginning until now and seen it progress has been an amazing transformation. When we started, we were very small, and now the chapter has grown to what, 300 members or so. So it means a lot.
How did the chapter first start? What were some memorable moments?
There weren't very many CCIMs back in the 70s. I got my CCM membership. It took me 5 years, but I got mine in 1976. And I was badge number 658, and the first 600 were grandfathered commercial brokers. So I think I was in the first class. So that meant a lot. And then some years later, we had an Austin, San Antonio chapter, and San Antonio was growing much faster than Austin at the time, and we thought we could better serve San Antonio and South Texas by splitting the two chapters into two operating entities. So we formed a chapter in 1992, and I became the first president. And that was somewhat momentous. In 92, the Resolution Trust Company had come to San Antonio and taken over 70 of our banks. And the Resolution Trust Company hired all the ex-bankers who made all these bad loans to manage all the foreclosed real estate that the Resolution Trust and the FDIC took over from the banks, which were in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And they started forming auctions, but they had to manage it for a few years in between. So the Resolution Trust members had to take CCIM classes to learn what they were doing. So our first few years as a chapter, selling the government our classes, we produced, I think, about $150,000, $200,000 in that 2-year period. That really kicked the chapter off pretty good. I think that's why I got the award.
How long have you been practicing real estate?
I started with my dad in 1963, painting rent houses, putting up commercial real estate signs, doing his bookkeeping on the weekend. I went off to college in 1965. I came back in 1970, and I became full-time in 1971. My dad would give me a roll of quarters every Monday, and he says, "Son, I don't care what you do during the day, but check in at 10, 2, and 4 so we know you're working." And I was to take the quarters and go to the 7-Eleven stores all over town, call in after I looked at real estate and called on people, and it was quite different back then. I tell many people when I got started, there were no cell phones, we had no fax machines, we had no Xerox copiers. If I wanted a copy of a plat, I would have to take tracing paper to the basement of the county courthouse and trace the paper plat records. It was that prehistoric. And there was no listing service. We all had pocket listings. If I took a listing and there was no way to tell other brokers about the listing, it was a pocket listing. There was no MLS, there's no Crexi, there's no LoopNet. So the brokers all created this technique called happy hour. So we'd meet 4 or 5 times a week at happy hour to trade information. That was our marketing sessions. Or so it's what we told our girlfriends and wives.
What were some notable shifts in commercial real estate that had a profound effect on the market?
Oh boy. About 1970, Loop 410 was starting to come into play. North Star Mall had just been built, and there was a push outside 410. All along San Pedro, the activity up to North Star Mall had occurred the previous decade, but from that point on, it went straight north. And just to give you an example of the growth, I went to MacArthur High School in 1960 to 65, and we didn't have parking lot for the students' cars. We didn't have cars. MacArthur was the edge of town. Everything north was cotton fields and cornfields. All the kids rode horses and tied them up under the trees. When I graduated, every one of us had a hot rod, and we had a parking lot back then. But that growth north was phenomenal back in the 70s. Money was easy. Developers could borrow money. My dad and another buddy of mine, Eddie Koplow, his dad, went down to Broadway Bank and signed a loan for us. And Broadway Bank made us a loan. We built the first warehouse north of San Antonio. out on Nacogdoches Road and sold it. And that was my first real estate deal. And for 50 years thereafter, I kept building. We'd have highs and lows in the economy. I always seemed to be building at the high and getting rid of them at the low, but I built 130 shopping centers in the last 50 years.
Wow.
From 7-Elevens to Walmarts, all over San Antonio and South Texas. One big one up in Dallas.
What would you say to the next generation of commercial real estate brokers that are going through this market?
Boy, that's a tough one. I was fortunate when I got out of college. There were very few commercial real estate companies. I think there was 5. There was Rohde Realty, there was DB Harrell, there was Naylor Realty, there was Rosso and Klein, then there was Kittrell Realty. Kittrell was the star back then, a bunch of young guys. And there was only 4 or 5 guys my age getting out of college coming back to San Antonio. Most of the college graduates went to New York or Houston or Dallas and got real jobs. And I was very lucky. I got to coattail guys like Ray Ellison, Quincy Lee, Red McCombs, Tom Frost. They accepted me as the younger guy in their groups, and I got to learn a lot very fast, much faster than anyone else. And what I learned from the mentors, I took to my happy hours and had great marketing sessions and made quite a bit of money as a young person.
What are some highs and lows that you experienced in your career?
The high was in 1985 when I had an audit done on me, and I had $100 million worth of shopping centers and land and apartments and warehouses. And in 1967, I had 0 investments in land, shopping centers, and apartments. Everything had either been sold at a discount price and gotten rid of or foreclosed on. I probably had 30 or 40 foreclosures. I ended up with over 80 million in financial judgments and resolved that over a 20-year period. None of my partners lost any money. I'm still doing business with the same bankers that loaned me money in the 70s and 80s.
Wow. So how were you able to get through that period even though you had so much debt that you had to clear?
Had no overhead. Lived on a mattress in an efficiency apartment. You go to the mats. But no overhead. We kept the team in place. We never missed payroll. We got really big into third-party management. Today, we're probably the largest shopping center manager in South Texas. We manage some 60 shopping centers from San Antonio all the way down to Laredo and the Rio Grande Valley. And now we're part of a much bigger operation called NAIXL. We've got 900 brokers and 27 offices in 4 states. The CCIM designation, when I started, was in its early transitioning period, and we kind of learned together and built the program together. I think I was in the first class with phenomenal guy Jay Lucas, John Stone, and a few others, and it really laid the basis for my knowledge of investment real estate, how to put a shopping center together, how to deal with the bankers. And then when the computers came in back in the early 80s, we could develop spreadsheets that would knock your socks off as far as projecting values and stuff. And the bankers loved it for a few years. So a lot of very interesting technological changes. Now, I just came back from Europe for 2 weeks, and with this little technique here, I didn't have to be in the office. I could do a Zoom call. I can send you a spreadsheet. I can do a CCIM package. I got net listings going on. I mean, I can be remote now, but when back in the early 60s and 70s, you had to be in your office. You had to be in the landline. You had to have a secretary up front to take messages, because when you were out, the only way to figure out who's calling you is go back, call your secretary, and she'll give you the phone calls. So it's really changed.
Given all the deals that you've done, I'm sure you've had some very hairy deals and some very really great deals, but it took a lot of work. Give us an example of a hairy deal that really took a lot of grit to get through and get over.
Hairy deal? I think I've had too many to talk about. I had one sale last year where my investor had put up $600,000 cash on a deal. We traded some money in from a prior sale, and we cashed a $43 million check at the title company. He had 600 grand basis in it. That's probably the top return deal. The hairy deals, I think you need to talk to me personally outside the meeting. I'll tell you all about them.
What do you think is a deal that was, for you, sentimentally very impactful for the city here in San Antonio?
Oh boy. Probably one of the worst decisions was done by my dad in Glen Hartman. My dad was the city councilman back in 1972. He was the mayor, actually, mayor pro tem under Lila Cockrell. And they didn't buy the water supply at Canyon Lake. They thought it was too expensive. That's probably the worst deal I've heard about. The best deal was probably Hemisphere 68 and Henry Cisneros getting behind and getting the Spurs Stadium built. Those were two momentous changes that really pushed San Antonio forward. And another thing most of you younger people don't realize is that in the old days, Texas banks were the only banks in our marketplace in this state. We didn't have national banks in San Antonio. So when the Resolution Trust came in and closed all our local banks, that opened it up to the Chases and the Wells Fargos. They all came in. So the banking shift in San Antonio was also a very quiet, momentous occasion for those who remember the 70s and 80s.
What area in San Antonio do you think is on the next path of growth?
Well, it's interesting you asked me that. Marty Winder's office across the hall from me for 10 years, he actually now is associated with us. But if you look at the map, this was the edge of town. There was nothing any further than here. And Marty, putting in SeaWorld, created this massive push for a corporate office park in San Antonio back in the 80s. Single-handedly. It landed SeaWorld, got the highway in, got the city to put utilities in. Then about 15, 18 years ago, I was involved with Red McCombs on the Stevens Ranch, and we pulled a sewer line all the way from down here, all the way up here to the Stevens Ranch and produced sewer, and all of a sudden this area popped.
How much did that cost?
$10 million. It cost $10 million bucks, and it created a couple $1 billion of improvements. And a lot of people don't know this also, so we participated in another sewer line that was $100 million, again bringing it down from a sewer plant down in here up into the Highway 90 area. And if you drive out to Castroville now, all this growth is that second sewer line. So I guess I'm the sewer king of San Antonio. All this is from two sewer lines, all this growth. In the next 5 years, Castroville is the target. If you go out here now, you'll see call centers and subdivisions, which I thought would never happen, but it's happening now. So the push west, the push north is capped by the smaller towns, but now the next big push is going to be 10 east. Affordable land, daytime employment, 15, 20 minutes to downtown San Antonio. It's really going to push east. Much faster it's going to push south. South's going to be more industrial.
Thank you so much for your time and
Thank
sharing
you.
your stories. It's been a pleasure, and congratulations on such an amazing award.
Thank you.
And for it to be named after you.
It's quite an honor.
We really appreciate your dedication to commercial real estate and what you've done for not only San Antonio, but commercial real estate as a whole.
You ought to be on TV.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.